Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. We will continue our discussion on topic 3, that is on understanding the Islamic economic system. To continue the discussion, our focus today is to know the difference between Islamic economic system in comparison with the conventional economic systems. When I say the conventional economic systems, the main focus of the discussion will be to compare Islamic economics with capitalism and socialism. There will be times when I will mention the difference between Islamic economics and the mixed economic system. So, in doing the comparison, we will consider the following criteria. The first one, we will compare Islamic economics with the other conventional economic systems based on the concept of property rights or property ownership. Second, we will also make the comparison based on incentive mechanism available in each economic system. Third, the comparison will be based on the organization of decision-making process for each system. And lastly, we will make the comparison according to the economic activities, the perspective on which activities are encouraged, prohibited, and so on. So, to begin, our discussion today primarily will be focusing on the first point here, that is to see the difference between the Islamic economic system with the other conventional economics based on the concept of property ownership. First, let's understand what do we mean by property ownership. In Arabic, mal or amwal are the words used referring to property. Mal is the singular, amwal is the plural for the Arabic words. For English words here, we have wealth, property, assets. These are some of the words used referring to property. By nature, human being loves wealth. When we study economics, the following are the main categories of goods or properties. Usually you will come to this type of categorization in discussing the issue of externalities in economics. In general, there are 4 types of goods or properties according to this division, and the 2 criteria used in coming out with this categorization are: the first one, the issue of excludability, as shown on top of this table, whether the properties are excludable or non-excludable. Excludability here refers to whether your form of ownership give you the rights to exclude others from having some rights over that property. They can be full level of excludability or partial excludability or non-excludability. The second criteria in coming up with these 4 categorizations is whether the property is rivalrous or non-rivalrous, as shown on the vertical side of this table. In other words, we are referring to the level of rivalry in getting access to the properties. Let's focus first on this box, where here we have a type of goods called private goods. For private goods, the properties are excludable for others. That means they have no rights over this property. The owner has full right on the property, and in terms of the level of rivalry, it is rivalrous in the context that to own these goods, you need to compete. For example, for you to own personal electronics such as your laptop, you need to bid over the price to win over the competition in the market. So by you being able to purchase the item given the price, that means you manage to compete in the market for the ownership. The second type of property, we move to this box because it is easier to see the difference between these 2 boxes first, because they go into opposite contrast. Public goods. The nature of these goods, first, it is non-excludable. In other words, when you have access to the property, doesn't mean that you can exclude others from enjoying the property as well. For example, we can have other examples than listed here, such as public parks or gardens, where you having access to the park does not give you the right to exclude others from enjoying the space over there. Another two types of goods shown in this table are common goods. This one. Common goods has some degree of public goods, and at certain point it has some degree of private goods. It shares the criterion of non-excludability with the public goods, where when we say common goods or common properties, for example, fish stocks or timber in the forest, it is non-excludable for people to get access to the property, where you have the access to do fishing at the lake, or you have access to explore the forest. If people are given the rights to catch fish from the lake or to cut tree from the forest, that means whoever do it first, they have rights over the property. So there is a level of rivalry in getting to the resources here. When we say common goods or common property, in economics, there is a theory about tragedy of the common. This theory argues that whenever there is a common property, like people are given the right to catch fish from a lake, this will result in overfishing activities, and as a consequence of that, the stock of fish in the lake will finish. So this is one concern, especially by the environmental economists. Given that context, please think about policies that could promote sustainability, because that's very Islamic. The last form of property here is club properties or club goods, where these types of properties or goods are exclusive for members. Therefore, it is excludable to non-members. Non-members cannot enjoy the properties here. But among members, they have no rivalry among them, because they can get access to the items or properties, such as cable TV, like your Astro at home. It is for subscribers, not for non-subscribers. Let's move on. When we mention about property ownership or ownership rights, these 3 points are very important, and these 3 points are well discussed in fiqh mu'amalat, where in Islam we pay attention on the object of the transaction. This object is the things for us to own. Islam, for example, prohibits ownership of prohibited items, such as ownership of haram shares, where the company is selling liquor, for example. And then in any contract of ownership, there are subjects who will involve in the transactions. For example, they can be sellers and buyers. And then the type of contracts involved, where the type of contracts here would determine the level of rights over the property, such as sales contract, lease, loan, and so on. Whether we are referring to private or public goods, the types of ownership can be divided into 2. Whether you have a complete ownership over the items, where complete ownership refers to owning the object and also the usufruct of it. Usufruct here refers to the benefits of the items. An example of this is where you own your laptop and you are using it, so the item belongs to you and you also derive benefits from that item, and that refers to a complete ownership. The second types of ownership is an incomplete ownership. Either you own the object or you get the usufruct or the benefits of the object. In this case, we can refer to a contract of lease or rent. You have a car, for example. That car belongs to you. Since you are renting the car out, you don't get the benefits. Those who rent the car from you enjoy the benefits of driving the car. So in this context, both parties have no complete ownership over the item. The one who rent the car from you has no right to sell the car to others. Moving to this slide, this is a very important slide to describe the difference between the concept of ownership in Islam in comparison to capitalism or socialism. I have explained this concept in another video, so please refer to that video. Here I will mention the points very briefly. The first point here refers to the concept of absolute ownership, which only belongs to Allah Ta'ala, the creator, the owner of the universe. Given that point, therefore, for human being, we are holding the amanah or the trust given to us. Therefore, man is a trustee, and our form of ownership is not absolute, it is relative, and there are conditions to all forms of ownership that we have in this world. Number 3, in relation to point number 2, since all forms of ownerships are a form of trust or amanah given, that means we are accountable to Allah Ta'ala for all forms of things that we own in this world. The absolute owner will ask us about how do we obtain the properties and how do we spend the properties. Point 4, Islam encourages work or labor as the main way for us to own properties in this world. At the same time, there is also a recognition of need criterion or welfare criterion. In this context, both are there in the types of ownership in Islam. We must work hard to improve our status in this life. At the same time, we must not neglect those who are in need because they also have the rights upon our wealth. The last point on Islamic vision on property ownership is that in Islam, both private and public property ownerships are recognized. Please refer to my video on this particular slide. When we say public property ownership, the following hadith is commonly quoted by many Islamic economists as a dalil or a proof to show that public property ownership is allowed in Islam. And when we say public properties, mainly they fall under the category of public goods and common goods. So for public ownership, access or control is determined by reference to public interest or maslahah in the society. In this context, we are referring to the decision that the government or the state has to consider in determining the usage of the properties. So state has the right to and can decide on the use of the property for the interest of the public. The state or the government want to privatize or nationalize the property. In Malaysia, we do have the privatization policy. In 1980s, under the administration of Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, that time, the government of Malaysia privatized many corporations owned by the government, such as Telekom Malaysia, Tenaga Nasional, Post Malaysia. Before these companies were under the government ownership, public goods, but then in considering the maslahah of the society, where government couldn't sustain the cost of operations of these big companies, then government privatized them. There are also examples where the government took over properties owned by individuals, and when that happens, that's what we mean by nationalization. In doing either privatization or nationalization, it is important for the government to observe justice and fairness, because often the actions undertaken will be unfair to the public at large or unfair to the individuals whose properties now being nationalized. The common issue is when the government want to nationalize certain area of land and compensation is given to the individuals. Sometimes the issue of what's the fair price, what if the individual doesn't want to sell the property to the government. So those are delicate issues, practical issues that require careful consideration. In Islam, private property ownership is allowed, and in comparison to a capitalist system that also promotes private property ownership, private ownership in Islam requires the owner to observe the following points. The first one is the issue of permissibility of the object. Permissibility mainly refers to the legal context of the items and the halal and haram context of the items. Legal here refers to the man-made law. For example, the item can be halal, permissible from the Sharia perspective, but it can be illegal in a certain country unless you fulfill certain condition. Owning weapons such as a gun in Malaysia is illegal without a license. The gun itself is permissible in Sharia, but when government puts certain condition for ownership, permissibility here requires ownership to fulfill both of those. Things can be haram but legal. Legal in the context that you can go to the stock market and buy non-Sharia compliant stocks. That ownership is legal from human law but haram from Islamic perspective. Therefore, when we say permissibility here, we need to fulfill the legal requirement and halal haram requirement. Next, private ownership also requires the owner to properly utilize the items. Proper utilization includes the Sharia requirement of it and the legal requirement of it. You can own permissible items, but if you misappropriate the utilization, such as you use your motorcycle to race at night illegally, that's an example of improper utilization. Police could fine you for this break of laws due to improper utilization. Constant utilization is also important for private ownership, particularly in Islam. Our religion discourages idle properties where the properties are left without productive use. In order to avoid idleness of properties, Islam therefore would impose zakat on savings or certain properties that are kept idle for 1 year and beyond. So that's to encourage constant utilization of the property. The last point here is about meeting obligations. Meeting obligations in terms of the obligation to pay zakat, as I mentioned earlier. Another example, if you own enough wealth, it is obligatory upon you to perform Hajj. That's also part of meeting obligation of ownership. Meeting obligation also includes the obligation to own the property in a halal manner and to utilize it in a right way. That's also meeting obligation. There are many examples on the last point here, the idea of this point is to show that because mankind has no absolute ownership over any form of properties owned by the person, when we have wealth, in order to enjoy the wealth legally, both from Islamic and man-made law perspectives, we need to observe these conditions. Therefore, in Islam, there is no full freedom, full form of ownerships where you can do whatever you like with the properties that you own. They are the rights of the Creator, Allah Ta'ala, over you and your wealth. They are your rights on your wealth for you, and there are also the rights of others on your property that you have to fulfill. So far, we have discussed the Islamic perspectives on property ownership. Let's make the comparison with the first system, capitalism, where under a capitalist system, it emphasizes on private property ownership. A lot of emphasis is given on this point. So for that, individuals are encouraged to work hard to build their wealth, and the government would have little involvement in limiting individuals' rights over their properties. The ideal of capitalism is such that market should be given the freedom to operate. Through market mechanism, individuals would involve in economic activities to build wealth. And from these activities, resources would be utilized to produce goods most wanted by individuals in the society. Those who have the ability to purchase the items mainly would own huge amount of wealth. As a consequence of that, the system has a problem of ignoring those who could not afford to own anything in the economy, because a capitalist system neglects the welfare or the need criterion in recognizing any form of ownership. That's one big problems under a capitalist system. In contrast, a socialist system puts a lot of emphasis on public ownership. All form of ownerships basically belong to the state or government, and for that, individuals in the system made up the society, and whatever provided by the government to the society, to every individuals, would be the types of ownership that they have. So that's the idea of socialism. Socialism pursues for equal distribution of wealth and income in the society. That's the ideal of communism. The drawbacks of this system is that it lacks the motivation for people to pursue for material wealth. Given these two systems, we see that both these systems stand at two opposite extremes. In between of these two systems, there is the mixed economic system. One big difference between the Islamic system and the mixed economic system is that we have the Sharia rulings governing our ownerships, either public and private ownership. On top of that, the philosophy of ownership in Islam boils down to Tawheed, where the recognition of Allah as the absolute owner is actually the core philosophy of property ownership in Islam. If you look at the other systems such as capitalism, socialism, and the mixed economic system, none of these systems, when they mention about property ownership, would relate that form of ownerships to the absolute ownership of God, because all the three systems are based on secular ideology. I think that's all for today. Inshallah, we will continue with incentive mechanisms in the next session. See you next time. Wassalam.